almost every time we think, yeah, we'll cut this short, or we'll go with this cheaper guy, for whatever. It could be a staircase repair or an environmental company digging holes in your ground or anything in between. If a company has experience and they've experienced this issue and they're a professional company, they've done it right, then it's almost worth whatever they want to charge you.
As an operator, I know other investors are romanticizing multifamily investing, and I'm looking to learn from other investors' mistakes. I know you are too, and you found the right place. Welcome to Myers Methods Presents Multifamily Missteps. Hey everybody, and welcome to Multifamily Missteps. I'm your host, Jerome, and I got Justin Fraser in with me today. I would say he's from up north in Pennsylvania, but this guy's in North Carolina now. They got some assets. Well, I don't know. They just sold some assets, but I'm not going to jump into that right now. Justin, how are you, my friend?
I'm great. And yes, I got a North Carolina license, so I'm on my way here.
He's official, ladies and gentlemen. Let's welcome him to the state, man. He's here now. He's a resident. Okay.
Oh, so I love Justin, the sound effects. Beautiful.
For the people who may not know who you are, what you're about, give them a little bit, man. Who are you?
Yeah, thank you. Justin Fraser here, host of the True Multifamily podcast, of which Jerome's been a frequent guest on. And I'm an asset manager for the DeRosa Group. We own now somewhere around 1,200 units. We're under contract on 670 more right now, 5 property portfolio. My role on the team is asset manager. And so I get to build the business plans and manage the managers, spend the CapEx money, make sure that we are doing everything that we told our investors we're going to do, make sure we meet the underwriting or exceed the underwriting, and keep all those trains running on time to make sure that our multifamily properties, which are businesses, and make sure those businesses are operating efficiently. So that's what I do.
Wow. And so did you say 5? How much did you say? That's a big number.
We're under contract on a 5 property portfolio right now for 670 units.
670 units, ladies and gentlemen. Look at that. You talk about a capital raise. So that's amazing. Is that one city? Is that multiple states? Like how does one buy 600 plus units?
It's 2 states, 2 cities, both cities that we're heavily invested in right now. So it's 3 properties in Lexington, Kentucky, which will put us over 1,000 out there, 1,000 units out there. And it's 2 properties in Winston-Salem, which, we have our property Diamond Ridge out there in Winston-Salem. So put us around 500 or 600 units out there.
Somebody, this was the real reason why I reached out to you. I just happened to invite you on the podcast. Somebody said, hey, the people that own this one should just buy that one down the street. There's a property on the market with 50% occupancy down the street from your Diamond Ridge deal. So we can talk about that.
I know it. I toured it. Yeah.
There we go. He already knows, ladies and gentlemen. I can't tell him anything. He knows his market. He knows his market. So listen, you're making me stutter because this thing is so good. So you just exited a monster deal in my hometown, man. So tell the listeners a little bit about that so they got some context before we dive into some of the stuff you learned and going through something full cycle, because I think most people never get there.
Well, hopefully one day they will. We have a lot of multifamily operators who have not gone full cycle. And honestly, that is a big reason we sold this property is, we've been buying up as many properties as we can over the last 4 years or so, but we had not gone full cycle on a deal. And so that is actually something very common question we get from folks is, hey, prove it, right? Like you can show me how things are going, but you don't have anything that actually closed and you went full cycle on. So part of the reason we wanted to sell was to be able to point to a case study. But the other reason is, we bought this thing in the mid 30s a door and selling it in the mid 80s a door. And in 4 years.
Whoa. We're going to make some money, ladies and gentlemen. That's a $50,000 spread. Can you do that math here?
We more than doubled. We basically bought it for 6.7, put a little over $2 million into it, and sold it for over $16 million. So
he's giving you the math. He's not skirting around it. He's not leaving numbers out.
I'm not hiding it. We have
math.
nothing to hide. I mean, we're very proud of it, actually, and we're transparent with our investors, and they did very well. They more than doubled their money in 4 years, which is a pretty great return for them.
That's outstanding. So
yeah,
what did you learn in this exit, right? Because a lot of us, we bought assets and we're operating them because we truly are operators. We're not flippers.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
You got to this place, you're like, hey, we need a case study. We need to show you guys that we can exit and get that big equity hit. And you did it. So what'd you figure out? What'd you learn that maybe you thought was real, but maybe it didn't end up being real, or vice versa?
I mean, so many things, like even from the beginning, like, okay, when is the time? Like at some point you're going to hit a tipping point and it's like, okay, now it's more beneficial to sell, right? And we had gained so much value in the property that, now our investors had all this equity locked up, and it's like, well, if we got the back to them, then they could go put all that extra money back to work, holding for another 3 or 5 years. We might have we're obviously going to still increase the value and they're still going to cash flow, but it was the right decision for them to get them their money back, right? So that was number one. Number two is we had gone through our business plan. Our business plan was to buy that property, renovate all the units, and we did different levels of renovation because we learned as we went. And so by the end of it, we had touched at least all the units. I would say a third of them, we had done a very nice high-end renovation. That's sort of what we ended up doing. The last 9 months of our renovation plan was a great, like, $12,000 a door renovation plan, and it was beautiful. And we were getting like these amazing premiums over the units that we had done in the beginning of our ownership. And so the decision was, okay, do we go back, get another bridge loan, and basically go from bridge to bridge, which you can do, but basically come back, take another bite of the apple, as you will, right? Either refinance or go to a bridge loan and put another $2 million in to finish out the CapEx plan, or do we take advantage of the fact that we rode this market and wrote it up, did our business plan, made a very solid, case study. It wasn't like we just turned 2 or 3 units and, we're pretending that there's a market for this higher rent. It's a third of the units are getting excellent premiums. There's a great case study. There's way more value add to do. And probably if we weren't selling it, it would have been a good property for us to buy because there's still a heavy value add. So I love that deal. I'll always love that property. But from the time we made the decision that we wanted to sell, you just think, okay, we'll just list it with a broker and sell it. I mean, that should be fairly easy, but the process, as always, is not that straightforward. It actually, I think, helped us become a better buyer because going through the process, working with the broker, understanding the bids that were coming in, first how to prepare the property for sale, then the bids that were coming in and what makes a stronger offer versus a weaker offer, hearing how the broker pitches certain buyers to us on the relationship that they have. Hey, I've worked with this guy. He's closed 3 deals. He might not be the highest price, but he's got more money hard. Like all these different factors go into what might make a strong offer versus, just the highest price. Right. And so going through that process was really eye-opening for us. And then we selected a buyer actually, and eventually fell out of contract, believe it or not. So we started this whole process like more than 9 months ago to list this property for sale. It was the spring of last year. But by listing it, the buyer was going through their environmental study and they found, there was a laundromat up the road, neighboring the property. And so there was some chemicals that were in the ground when they did their phase 2. And basically that means is they sent an environmental company out to do some digging because of the fact that there's a laundromat there. And believe it or not, they dug in almost the exact same spot within a few feet of where we dug when we did our phase 2, when we purchased the property. Our phase 2 came back clean. Their phase 2, just a few feet over, and 4 years later came back with elevated levels of chemicals that you don't want in the ground. And so we had a little negotiation with the buyer, and at the end of the day, the buyer just was not comfortable moving forward or couldn't get their lender to move forward. We actually thought that we were continuing to work in a friendly way with the buyer. The buyer said they wanted to do some additional air quality tests. We were totally open to that. And, they then kind of ghosted us for a while. And then at one point just sent us a letter from their attorney saying, no, we're out. Right. And so We had gotten a little relaxed where we were letting them operate because we found out this news about the chemical. Like we had the broker communicate with us and with the buyer, but our legal wasn't sending like the official legal letter that says, okay, this means that this paragraph is getting extended by this many days, and if this, then that. We kind of just let it kind of happen through the broker, and then when this guy decided to back out, we were left like, hey, there's a kind of a legal mess here because we were operating under the assumption you were going to go do more tests. You now decided not to do more tests, but your window where you're supposed to tell us you're not going to do any more tests has passed. So technically we should be getting your deposit, but you're saying you can't. And now attorneys are involved. It becomes like a whole big mess. And whether you think it's clean, it's not clean. There, of course, it's never black and white. And so we ended up having this whole kind of dispute with the guy that backed out. We worked out an arrangement, basically to cover our legal costs of going through it. But the great thing
Ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch.
It's okay. We learned a hard lesson there about probably if our attorney had sent one email, then his deposit would have been hard and it would have been, hundreds of thousands of dollars swinging our way. But because we didn't, because we let the broker handle it, it really, there was one vague email that they're interpreting one way and we're interpreting it another way. And it just wasn't very clean. And so that was a mistake. But at the end of the day, we had our costs covered. The property was cash flowing. So we ended up continuing to cash flow, for the extra months that this ended up drawing this out. And we ended up getting a buyer the next week. Our broker had another buyer who was hot and ready to go. We had a lot of people that were, that submitted some really great offers. And he had a buyer that had dealt with environmental issues before. And I think the net difference in price on the contract price was like $40,000 less. So we ended up, we made that back in cash flow over the extra month that it took to close the deal. So we ended up, neutral or positive again. So we kind of Houdini'd our way out with a new buyer, brought that buyer in, and, we still have this, potential environmental issue that we had to deal with. Right. So we took it upon ourselves and spent, it's not much. I think it was $13,000, in the grand scheme of things, when you're selling a property for 16 million, 13 grand is, let's do it. Right. It's not even a question. So we did the extra testing. We found out there was no issue with the air. So the chemicals in the ground, it's not in the air quality. Their new buyer's lender was perfectly fine with that. And environmental issue was case closed, and we got to move towards closing. But what a ride it was when we thought we'd be done and had to go find another buyer.
A lot of people want to be profitable multifamily operators, but lack the knowledge, deal flow, experience, and capital to be successful. They often try to overcome these challenges out of order, slowing or eliminating their ability to get the next deal done. We have developed a framework that allows them to gain the knowledge they need to find profitable deals. When they use our system, they create time and location freedom, as well as the generational wealth they desire for their family. The Multifamily Kickstart program has proven to be the fastest way to establish credibility and build a profitable apartment portfolio. Hop over to jeromemyers.co to find out more information. About a roller coaster, right? Like, you guys are in and we're getting ready to get paid, and then we're not even getting the deposit, and this thing's been tied up for months. And what are we going to do now? And was this person that actually ended up closing the deal, were they in the original pool of bidders, or was this somebody completely new?
Someone completely new, that the broker knew, that that had dealt with, he had just closed a different property that had an environmental issue. Same thing, that just needed a little extra testing, and had a lender that was willing to work with them and work through things. And so that's what they did, and they were good to go.
All right, Justin, level with me, man. When you heard that there was something on the phase 2, what'd you think?
Oh my God. Well, I didn't know, all I knew is bad. I didn't know how bad, but yeah, I remember reading this phase 2 and really trying to understand, phase 2 is a lab report is really what it is. And so you're trying to understand these readings of these chemicals that you can't pronounce, let alone understand what they even mean, and it's 50 pages long and on and on. But we called somebody and read it a few times and really understood, okay, this is, we didn't know, like, okay, there's chemical here, there's a problem. Like, and so we run through the scenarios, like, okay, best case scenario is we test further and there's no issue. Worst case scenario is we're saddled with, we can't sell this thing. No lender is going to lend on it. And we're going to have to remediate these chemicals that have been pouring into this property. And who knows how bad it is. The North Carolina, environmental agencies get involved, and there's, all kinds of issues that come with laundry chemicals that are in the ground. And if it had been getting in the air, there's like literal safety issues that we could have been encountered, where we would have to evacuate some of the buildings. And so it's like, oh my God, there's a million things. We've never dealt with this before, never experienced it, but you learn on the fly. And, at the end of the day, we would have to do the right thing. We always try to do the right thing. And so we had put our manager on notice, like, hey, we're doing air quality tests here. We may have to pull our tenants out of these buildings and find somewhere for them to go. And so they had even started looking at like other properties that they had, or do we put them in hotels, or like, what do we do? So those contingency plans were being put in motion while we were waiting for our results. Thankfully, the results came back clear, but what a mess. And it really ended up being one of the best case scenarios it could have been, but it could have been so much worse.
This is wild, man. Who knows? Because you're buying a piece of dirt, right? And
right.
You don't know what your neighbors are doing, and stuff can travel through the voids in the soil. I actually might pretend like I have an engineering degree now and could go into that, but I'm not going to. I'm going to stay high and light and just really enjoy the fact that you guys were able to get out of that thing. But
yeah,
to the listeners, there's real risk when you buy these deals, and especially for the length of time that we own them. And so you got to be really diligent in your process, and, just forcing your way through, being a bull in a china shop to get the thing closed could be one of the worst things you do, because you get saddled with all these issues that you didn't know were there. And so out of curiosity, was the end buyer on this deal, were they using agency debt, or was this like a bridge lender or a community bank? Like, how do you fund that? Because some people have different restrictions.
Well, they ended up using agency, and the lender they worked with, the air test that we did satisfied the issue that there's a chemical in the soil, but it's not impacting the property and the tenants, the actual buildings, nothing's coming up. So there are other things that the new buyer can do eventually, where there might be, there's all kinds of like machinery you can put in place, and basically like kind of like what you would do for radon, but for these other chemicals. But those not necessary here. Their lender was on board, and so I don't know the particulars of their loan, but I know that their lender was okay with it.
Beautiful. Yeah. And so, the last question, the one I ask all of my guests, is, what's the words of wisdom you have for the folks who are out there with you in your earbuds right now?
Well, relating to, this story, it's like, just stay positive and have, where you think this one thing is going to happen, and you're clear to close, and you're sailing towards closing, and then you get hit out of left field. But, it's easy to kind of get down on yourself, but just take a breath, make a plan. And if maybe it's a contingency plan A through Z, but make as many plans as you can. And best case scenario, this happens. Maybe we try this, maybe we try that, and just get the experts involved, spend the money to have the people who have done this. If you're dealing with an environmental issue, get the environmental companies involved, right? There's people that are experts in this and can handle it. And so don't try to pick up pennies here or save pennies. Invest in the right companies, bring the right people in, stay calm, and just work your plan to get it to close.
Now, that's interesting you brought that up, because last week's episode, the guest said something very similar about not picking the cheapest option.
Mm-hmm.
So if you would indulge me, you said don't try to pick up pennies. Give the listeners a little bit more on that, because I think as I become more sophisticated as a buyer, as unsophisticated as I am, I'm beginning to realize that, the cheapest provider is usually the most expensive option.
It's almost always true. almost every time we think, yeah, we'll cut this short, or we'll go with this cheaper guy, for whatever. It could be a staircase repair or an environmental company digging holes in your ground, or anything in between. If a company has experience and they've experienced this issue, and they're a professional company, they've done it right, then it's almost worth whatever they want to charge you. And if you're shopping around to try to get the cheapest price, what that really means to me, Jerome, is like, let's look at the big picture here, right? We're selling this property for a profit of, almost $10 million, right? So what's the difference if I have a company that's going to charge me $15,000 or $6,000? I'm going to go with the one that's got a reputation, that I know does good work, that I've worked with in the past, that other people have told me does quality work. It's like, why try to save a few bucks? Because at the end of the day, if they do something wrong, or they skip a step, or they give me the light version of the report, and I don't know what that means versus the full version of the report, then that's only going to cause trouble later on. So do it right the first time, pay for quality. There's too many things that can go wrong if you don't. So invest. And that's everything top to bottom with our properties. You don't spend unnecessarily, but don't be afraid to use the right vendor for the right project.
Right vendor for the right project. Justin, this is phenomenal. Congratulations again. Matter of fact, you guys need a hand clap, man, because this is outstanding, man. People will think that they can make money in multifamily. They think that they can. They don't know for sure. But you guys proved out the thesis, and now you got a great case study you can use to go back to folks who are thinking about investing with you guys and say, hey, here's the proof. We went full cycle. Here's the proof in the pudding. So Justin, again, thank you so much, man.
Thanks for having me. We appreciate it, man.
For sure. And to the listeners, the pack's with you. We'll talk soon. You made it to this juncture, so you really love what we shared on this episode of Myers Methods Presents Multifamily Missteps. Do us a favor. Give us a 5-star rating. Give us a review. And share this with somebody who's interested in multifamily investing. Until the next time, the pack is with you.